Lucchese went in a direction quite different than the one his parents imagined for him. His association with Luciano and other hoodlums led him directly into the Mafia, which would be a part of his life from then on. Lucchese, Luciano, and many of their friends eventually became members of the large gang run by Joe the Boss Masseria, a Sicilian who operated out of the Italian neighborhood of East Harlem. Bootlegging was their main source of illegal profit, made possible by the national ban on the sale of alcohol. While supporters of prohibition had hoped it would cure America's social problems, in reality, it provided gangsters with the opportunity of a lifetime. Lucky Luciano and his criminal associates worked out an elaborate system to import and distribute alcohol all over the United States. Meyer Lansky masterminded the finances. Tommy Lucchese organized the transportation system. Frank Costello handled the bribery of law enforcement and politicians.
These were guys who were innovative thinkers. They were smart, they were shrewd, they were not educated in the academic sense, but they understood business. They understood markets. They had all the requisite talents to become great businessmen. But for reasons that we don't quite yet understand, they went in another direction.
By the mid-30s, the business of bootlegging had become highly competitive and dangerous, with violent turf wars breaking out all over America. In New York, Joe the Boss found his supremacy threatened by a new Sicilian arrival, the power-hungry Salvatore Maranzano.
Maranzano came over and he tried to purify the mobs that would be all coming from one part of Sicily, and they would knock off everybody else and control everything.
Maranzano trusted only Sicilians from the same hometown as his, Castellammarese del Golfo, and the feud between Masseria and Maranzano became known as the Castellammarese War. As the war escalated, the younger Americanized Italians and their Jewish gangster partners plotted to rid themselves of what they called the old mustache Petes, whose rivalry they viewed as an obstacle to true wealth.
Meyer Lansky summed it up best. He said, look, Chevrolet salesmen don't shoot Ford salesmen, do they? He had made his point. Why are you shooting each other? There's plenty for everybody.
An ambitious and cunning Lucky Luciano pretended to defect to the Maranzano camp. He then lured his old boss, Masseria, to a Coney Island restaurant where Masseria was executed, reportedly by Vito Genovese, Joe Adonis, Albert Anastasia, and Bugsy Siegel. Maranzano claimed victory and called a meeting of all the Italian gangsters, proclaiming himself boss of bosses. He then divided up the business amongst those most loyal to him. This was the beginning of the Mafia crime families as we know them today.
Maranzano formed 5 specific organizations, okay, and he set them up along the lines of a Roman legion. He didn't call them families. They were signed up just like Roman legions. And they were to control strictly the crime within their very specific organized territories.
But there were those who found fault with the new system.
Luciano and Genovese were under him, but they saw that he was opposed to working with the Jewish mobsters, and if you were in bootleg at the time, you had to be involved with the Jewish gangsters like the Purple Gang that dominated bringing over liquor through Detroit.
Meanwhile, Maranzano knew he'd have to get rid of the fast-rising Luciano. But Luciano had sent over Tom Galliano and Tommy Lucchese as spies in the Maranzano camp.
Maranzano was no fool. He knew he had to get rid of Luciano and the whole bunch, and Costello and the others. He had it. So he was planning to kill them all. However, the 2 spies that he trusted very much was Gagliano and Lucchese.
Lucchese warned Luciano of the plot. The Luciano loyalists then counterplotted and sent Lucchese to Maranzano's office on the pretense of having urgent business to discuss. Within moments, 4 Jewish gangsters posing as treasury agents burst into the office and lined Maranzano's men up against the wall. Lucchese fingered the victim, and the assassins carried out the hit on Maranzano.
Lucchese ran out, and when the police came, there was nobody there except a dead man. And that cleared the way for the American Mafia to be established.
With great criminal vision, Luciano, together with his Jewish mobster partner Meyer Lansky, established a national syndicate of organized crime and the commission to act as governing body. In New York, the five families set up by Maranzano were reorganized, and Tom Galliano was given leadership of one of them, with Tommy Lucchese as his underboss. After Galliano died from natural causes, Lucchese took command and led the family to its most prosperous and peaceful era. Though his main occupation was mob boss, Lucchese kept a low profile and maintained a front in the garment business to camouflage his criminal activity. His loan-sharking enterprise gave him ownership in several legitimate businesses. He lent huge amounts of money to garment manufacturers, desperate to meet commitments to their buyers. When the owners couldn't repay the loan, Lucchese settled for a piece of the business. To the outside world, he was a very successful dressmaker.
He controlled one of the big dress companies there, and at the same time shook down all the others. They were taking like 30, 40 grand a year for you to stay in business.
The real money, of course, was in the rackets Lucchese had come to learn so well. Along with loan sharking, the Lucchese family ran another traditional big money maker, gambling. It was a time-honored business for gangsters, Italian, Jewish, or other.
But Bugsy Siegel would walk down the street, and what first attracted him was gambling. There were gambling games out on the street, crap games. People rolling dice up against a brick wall. And he'd look down and be piles of money laying around, people betting money.
They can set up dice rooms, and it may not sound like much, but when you have 6 dice rooms going 24 hours a day with high rollers, you're taking in thousands and thousands of dollars an hour.
The mob didn't always agree on business. One of the rackets that caused the greatest dissent was heroin dealing. Tommy Lucchese opposed drug trafficking as it left the family too exposed to scrutiny on the streets. Others, unable to ignore the enormous profits, embraced it. All took their share of the profits from the illegal trade.
Lucchese got his cut, you know. He kept away from it, but he expected his cut.
By the 1930s, the mob was looking for new industries to corrupt. Their most profitable enterprise, bootlegging, dried up with the repeal of prohibition. Partnering again with Jewish gangsters, Lucchese found a new source of revenue in New York's multi-million-dollar kosher chicken industry. He gained control of one of the key unions, set prices, and made sure the mob got a piece of the profits. He repeated this highly successful formula in other industries.
At another point, they took control of a union which represented candy workers, people who manufacture candy. And as a result, the price of candy went up rather sharply. So millions of American children were paying a small Mafia tax every time they bought a little bar of candy.
When the mob was in a particular industry, they exerted the kind of influence or domination or control which meant that individual business owners within that industry really had very little choice on how they were to operate. And that was devastating for economic freedom, for costs, and for the way society ought to be run.